Hello there, and today our subject is cameras, because I actually managed to get a new camera from a flea market yesterday. But first, a little bit of history. There we go. Pentax. This is the Pentax Spotmatic F. This is from about 1974, something like that. This was an incredibly popular range of cameras that Pentax made. Carried on for about 20 years, I think. No, 10 years. I've got that wrong. This is 10 years Spotmatic production carried on from. Beautiful camera. You find quite a few of them about. They're not rare. So getting a nice one like this is not too difficult if you look around. But you have to keep looking around till you get one for the right price, because some people seem to think they're worth a fortune, which they're not. I think this one cost I think this was the old magic price point at Value Village of $7.99, and you'll see that price point crop up a few times actually. But that was Pentax. Pentax are incredibly popular in this area. Pentax and then Nikon, then maybe Minolta. You very rarely see Olympus cameras where I live. Very, very rarely see Olympus cameras. But Pentax, wow, lots of them about, and people must have spent big money on these cameras and looked after them like they were babies. I've got all sorts of documentation with some of these cameras, and they've taken them over to the States, and they've signed them out of Canada, and they've brought them back, and they've, and they've looked after them in cases, and they're in wonderful condition like this. But after the Spotmatic series, what did Pentax come up with? Well, actually, no, we're still on the Spotmatic series. We have this beauty, and this is a beauty. This is a camera with a little bit of rarity about it. I mean, then it's not worth $1 million, but I'll tell you what, on eBay, this type of camera is still worth money. One of the few that is really still people want to go out and buy and maybe spend $150 on, something like that. This is an ES2. This is an Electro Spotmatic 2. That's a Spotmatic. This is an Electro Spotmatic. That camera is all mechanical. The only thing that uses a battery is the meter. You can use it without a battery, just as a camera, and it'll keep going forever. This camera uses 4 little 1.5 volt button cells, and this was a big first. You pick the aperture of the lens, the camera pick the shutter speed automatically based on the light that was coming in and the speed of the film. Doesn't sound like a big deal nowadays, but while back in 1973-ish, when this was made, that was a big deal, and that was an expensive camera. I think I once worked out the price of what it was then and the price what it would be now, and I think it's something like about 1,500 Canadian dollars. This costs its buyer, its original buyer. And I found this at my very, very local thrift store one day. I walked in and it was in a case, and I thought it was a Spotmatic because it was in a Pentax leather case. and when I opened it up I saw it was this camera, and I didn't know what it was. It was a Pentax of some sort, and I actually paid $15 for that. Yes, $15. What was I thinking? Anyway, it was a great buy, and it's one of my favourite cameras. I don't keep the batteries in it because for some reason it seems to drain the batteries very, very fast, and one of the batteries, the very last one in the of the 4, if you leave them in, even with the camera turned off, that battery will actually swell really badly and leak. So I keep that with no batteries in. It does work perfectly. All the incredible old late 60s electronics that's packed into that camera works just as good today as it did then. It's amazing, absolutely amazing. But I don't leave the batteries in it just for safety's sake. So this was the Spotmatic. That's the Electro Spotmatic 2 ES2. What comes next? Well, where is that? It's always hard to see where things are. I should look at the cameras I'm messing with rather than the picture, shouldn't I? This is a Pentax K1000. It's basically this camera, but instead of having a screw-on lens mount, it's got a bayonet lens mount. The bayonet lens mount was much more modern and allowed the camera makers to put all sorts of features on later, such as gauging the light that was coming in the lens and the aperture, and transmitting all that information to the camera was much easier with a modern bayonet style lens than the very old-fashioned screw-on or M42 type lenses that were used on the old Spotmatics. So that's basically an updated Spotmatic. Not very updated actually. It's almost exactly the same as the Spotmatic, but with a bayonet lens instead of a screw-on lens. Once again, it's a completely mechanical camera. Only uses battery for its light meter. And actually, there's no way of switching the light meter off, so if you don't put the lens cap on, the batteries run out. Now I have definitely had the lens cap on this one, I think. Anyway, I'm not really too bothered. It's just something you've got to have in a collection. They're very, very plentiful. You see a lot of these about. At one time they used to be hold their value a lot because they were the classic student camera. If you were doing photography course anywhere at university or whatever, and they had a 35mm module, many teachers would insist that you got a Pentax K1000 because it was the one that they used to teach 35mm photography, and so they actually sold for quite high prices. That seems to have gone down now. Most of these cameras are really, the prices of these, you can get them for really low prices, but not on eBay. Not for us Canadians. You cannot get them on eBay for a decent price because the low value of the Canadian dollar at the moment really spoils eBay. If you pick one of these up for $30, you have to double that at least by the time you've made allowances for the currency conversion. You've paid inordinate amounts of shipping from the US, because that's where most of these things are on eBay, and even then you've probably got to pay some kind of customs duty or something. You'll get it by the time you've got hit with all the charges. You've got to double it or more. So eBay's just not a thing you can do these days. Not for us anyway. You've got to look around your local thrift stores, flea markets, local classified ads like Kijiji to find somebody who, you know, doesn't want the earth for their camera, because quite often when people bought these new and they've still got them today, they remember going into large amounts of debt for these cameras. They cost a fortune, and they've babied them and kept them in beautiful condition. And when they come to sell them on Kijiji, they don't realise that in the marketplace, they're worth very little. You know, you'll see people like saying $250 for one of these cameras, and really they're only worth $10. In this place here where we are, there's no big money for cameras like this, and you see a lot of people advertising them for massive prices, because they paid massive prices for them back in the late 70s or early 80s, and they've looked after them, and they still think they're worth a fortune, but they're not. They're plentiful. They sold millions of these cameras. They're not rare, but they are great cameras to collect, but you've got to get them at the right price. There's no point in overpaying for them. There is a camera on Kijiji at the moment, a Konica auto reflex that I would love, but it's the camera with a big bag full of accessories like stupid flash guns and blower brushes and couple of third-party lenses, and I think they wanted $175 for it. I think over the weeks and weeks it's been there, they've put it down to 150. Last time I looked, it had come down to 140. Well, you know, I just want the camera, and I would want it for maybe $50 maximum. The camera with its standard lens. I wouldn't want all the junk and the leather bag that they think is worth a fortune. But anyway, I'm keeping an eye on that one. Anyway, enough of my ranting about camera prices. So yeah, this was Pentax then, and what happened was Olympus brought out the OM series, the OM1, the OM2, and they made 35mm cameras much more compact than this. These don't look all that big to me, but Olympus made a far more compact camera, so the race was on. Then Pentax had to make a more compact camera, and I will be just back in a second with the results. And there it is. Where is it there? This is the Pentax ME. Ashai Pentax, you see, still written on the top of the prism. Very nice f1.7 lens, really good lens. And this camera was another aperture priority camera. It's automatic. There's no manual mode. You set the film speed for the film you've put in. You set the aperture you want. You focus it. You take the picture. The shutter speed is worked out completely by the camera. There's nothing else to do. In fact, you can see on the top you've got the auto mode, you've got L, which I'm not exactly sure what it is. You've got 100x, which is a manual shutter speed. If you've got no batteries in it, it will go at 1/100th of a second. One manual shutter speed, that's all you've got. And the B, of course, keeps the shutter open while you press the button, and then it shuts it when you let go. And this was 1977, and it was Pentax's answer to the compact series of cameras made by Olympus, the OM series, which were really small. And if you just want to look how much smaller the camera is, there is the old Spotmatic of 1974, 75, and there is 77's ME. You can see the old Spotmatic is a bigger camera, and to be honest, I prefer the bigger cameras. There's just more to get hold of than the smaller ones, but that's the way everything went. It went more compact, and that's what they had to do. Now this is aperture priority. That's completely manual. But look at the difference between the ES2 of 19, I think say if we say 73, the actual, there were two more cameras before that. There was the Electro Spotmatic, which only sold in Japan and which was riddled with problems and was never sold outside Japan. There was the redesigned ES, and then a year later the ES2, which was even more redesigned and refined and much more reliable than the other two Electro Spotmatic cameras. And they were only in production for about a year or so each, so there's not that many of them about. But that camera does exactly the same as that camera. But look at the difference in size and weight and appearance. This is a big camera that actually needed this extended bit at the bottom there, which none of the others have, and that was packed with electronics. The ES2 is packed with electronics in that bottom bit there. This does the same thing in a tiny case at half the weight. Built pretty much just as well as this. Much more reliable. You know, better camera, does the same thing. But in that few years from 73, 74 to 77, that 3 or 4 years, look at the technological differences and the changes that took place in these cameras. Technological change was really running at a pace at that point. So I got this camera, the ME. I got that yesterday actually at a local flea market, and never really seen any cameras there before. And I think I said to the guy, "How much do you want?" And he said, "What do you want to offer me?" And I said $10. And when I looked underneath, I found that the battery compartment was completely welded shut, and the battery had burst. There was green slime coming out of the battery holder at the bottom. So I said, well, you know, this camera doesn't really do anything without batteries, and if the batteries have completely ruined the electronics, which I've had a couple, it's just really no good to me. So we went down to $8. So $8 changed hands, and I took it home. And to cut a long story short, I soaked the battery holder with a little bit of WD-40, left it overnight, and it came off perfectly this morning, absolutely perfectly. And luckily there was really not, but the top battery had leaked, but the one that touched the electrical contacts was fine. So a quick clean out, some new batteries in, and she's working like a champ. That's the ME from 77. They updated the ME in 1980 with the very, very imaginatively titled ME Super. This was 1980's update of the ME. The ME was a very, very popular camera. Sold a lot of cameras for Pentax. They updated it. And what's the difference? Because they look pretty much the same. Well, the difference between the ME and the ME Super is that the ME Super has got complete manual control of the shutter speeds. There, see, it's got two little buttons on, and you can have it on auto, just like the ME, or you can set it to manual, and you can pick your aperture and your shutter speed, and you have complete control over the camera, which is what a lot of photographers really wanted to have. They really weren't happy with an automatic camera. Lots of photographers, including me at the time, I had an Olympus camera that was aperture priority, and I found it great. I used it all the time, never had any trouble. Never really wanted to mess about with shutter speeds. But a lot of camera users did. And in 1980 they updated the camera with the fully manual system, and this was another big seller for Pentax. That's got an f2 lens on it, Pentax M. The one I got yesterday has got a really nice f1.7 Pentax M lens. Now, quite nice. So that was $8. This was $8 as well. The ME Super, I got that last year on my birthday. 23rd of January 2015, went into a local thrift store called Bibles for Missions, and it was in a completely random spot in the store, in a bag on the shelf where you would never find a camera, and I picked it up and it said $7.99. Of course there's no tax in those shops, so what you saw on the label was what you paid. So $7.99 for that one, $8 for that one. I seem to find a Pentax ME camera at, either on my birthday or at the beginning of every year. This is the second one. But as you can see from all these cameras, I think that's all my Pentaxes. Pentax was definitely the most popular brand of camera in this area, without a doubt, because you can find them everywhere. I've had more than this, and I've sold a few, and I've given a couple away, but these are sort of the ones that I'm keeping. And to be honest, if I could find any more of these Spotmatic series, you know, I'd have as many of them as I could get, because there are about 4 or 5 in the series. Now I would like to have all 5, really. That was the very last Spotmatic that was made, the Spotmatic F. That was the final Spotmatic that they ever made. I would like the earlier ones. I've had the earlier ones and I've sold them. I took the quick buck when they were worth quite a lot of money, and I kind of slightly regret that. But look at that, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 at least. And no, I don't think I've got any more. I think I've got 5 at the moment. So the mighty Pentax, definitely New Brunswick's most popular quality single lens reflex camera, without a doubt. Well, I hope you enjoyed this little tour of my Pentax collection and the story behind them. Do comment if you'd like any more videos like this, telling you a little bit of the story behind camera brands, because I've got other ones like Nikon, for instance, quite a few of those. I don't know a lot about all these cameras, so I may be wrong in some of my points. So if you've got any comments and you can put me right on anything, I'd love that. But anyway, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.